guys. Here we are to read A Long Walk to Water, Chapter 5, and do gist notes. Let's get started. Page 26 to follow along with me. Southern Sudan, 2008. There was a big lake 3 days' walk from Naya's village. Every year when the rain stopped and the pond near the village dried up, Naya's family moved from their home to a camp near the big lake. Naya's family did not live by the lake all year round because of the fighting. Her tribe, the Nuer, often fought with the rival Dinka tribe over the land surrounding the lake. Men and boys were hurt and even killed when the two groups clashed. So Naya and the rest of her village lived at the lake only during the 5 months of the dry season, when both tribes are so busy struggling for survival that the fighting occurred far less often. Like the pond back home, the lake was dried up, but because it was much bigger than the pond, the clay of the lake bed still held water. Naya's job at the lake camp was the same as at home, to fetch water. With her hands, she would dig a hole in the damp clay of the lake bed. She kept digging, scooping out handfuls of clay until the hole was as deep as her arm was long. The clay got wetter as she dug until at last water began to seep into the bottom of the hole. The water that filled the hole was filthy, more mud than liquid. It seeped in so slowly that it took a long time to collect even a few gourds full. Naya would crouch by the hole, waiting for water, here for hours at a time, and every day for 5 long months until the rains came and she and her family could return home. Okay, so we're going to stop there for our first gist notes. So again, reading about Naya, in her village, they would leave when the rain stopped and their pond near their village dried up. They moved to a camp near a big lake. They did not live there all year long because of the fact that there was fighting between her tribe, the Nuer, and their rival tribe, the Dinka. Again, we kind of read that in a couple of chapters ago about how the Nuer and the Dinka always fought over land and fighting over land that was richest in water. So this is kind of showing that exact thing happening here. They were fighting over that land, so they had to leave and go and live by a different lake because of the fighting. The lake was all dried up, but because it was bigger than the pond, the clay bed still held some water, so Naya would spend some time digging to get that water that she could find. Again, remembering that the water she does find is still muddy and filthy, just like the water that she was getting from the other place as well. She just waits for water. So hours and hours at a time, each day, she would sit and wait for the water until the rains were to come again. So we will stop, add some gist notes, and then continue. All right, Salva's story. Southern Sudan, 1985. Salva's eye was swollen shut. Buxa's forearms were lumpy and raw. A friend of Buxa's had a fat lip. They all looked as though they had been in a terrible fist fight. But their injuries weren't bruises. They were bee stings. A fire had been started under the tree to smoke the bees out of the hive and make them sleepy. But as Buxa and the other jerkhole men were removing the hive from the tree, the bees woke up and were not at all happy to discover that their home was being taken away. They expressed their unhappiness very clearly by buzzing, swarming, and stinging a lot. It was worth it, Salva thought, as he touched his eye gingerly. His belly was a rounded lump stuffed full of honey and beeswax. Nothing has ever tasted so good as those pieces of honeycomb dripping with rich, luscious gold sweetness. Along with everyone else in the group, he had eaten as much as he could hold, and then a little more. All around him, people were licking their fingers in great satisfaction, except for one Dinka man who had been stung on his tongue. It was swollen so badly that he could not close his mouth. He could hardly swallow. Salva felt very sorry for him. The poor man couldn't even enjoy the honey. All right, so Salva and the group he was walking with came across a beehive, and they actually worked very hard to get the honeycomb and the beeswax from that beehive and had it to eat. Remember, they've been walking and they don't have really a lot of sources of food, so they're all very happy to finally get a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of food in their bellies. So they were pretty satisfied overall. However, because of the fact they had to fight the bees, a lot of them actually got stung quite a bit and were swollen up as a result. All right, we're going to stop here for a gist note and then continue. The walking seemed easier now that Salva had something in his belly. He had managed to save one last piece of honeycomb and had wrapped it carefully in a leaf. By the end of the next day, all the honey was gone, but Salva kept the beeswax in his mouth and chewed it for the memory of sweetness. The group got a little bigger with each passing day. More people joined them. People had been walking alone or in little clusters of 2 or 3. Salva made it a habit to survey the whole group every morning and evening, searching for his family, but they were never among the newcomers. One evening a few weeks after Salva had joined the group, he made his usual walk around the fireside, scanning every face in the hope of seeing a familiar one. Then, ouch! Salva almost lost his footing as the ground underneath him seemed to move. A boy jumped to his feet and stood in front of him. "Hey, that was my hand you stepped on," the boy spoke Dinka, but with a different accent, which meant that he was not from the area around Salva's village. Salva took a step back. "Sorry, are you hurt?" The boy opened and closed his hand a few times, then shrugged. "It's all right, but you really should watch where you're going." "Sorry," Salva repeated. After a moment's silence, he turned away and began searching the crowd again. The boy was still looking at him. "Your family?" he asked. Salva shook his head. "Me too," the boy said. He sighed, and Salva heard that sigh all the way to his heart. All right, we're going to stop there. Okay, so here within the camp, Salva has now come across another boy, which, again, he's been amongst adults or children most of this time, so now he's found another boy around his age. And he's very excited because this is also a Dinka boy, so somebody from his own tribe. He has a little bit of a different accent to his voice, so he knows that he doesn't quite come from where his village is, but he still is Dinka, so he's part of his tribe. And this boy also is looking for his family as well. So we're going to stop and take a gist note and come back. Their eyes met. "I'm Salva." "I'm Muriel." It was good to make a friend. Muriel was the same age as Salva. They were almost the same height. When they walked side by side, their strides were exactly the same length. And the next morning, they began walking together. "Do you know where we're going?" Salva asked. Muriel tilted his head up and put his hand on his brow to shade his eyes from the rising sun. "East," he said wisely. "We're walking into the morning sun." Salva rolled his eyes. "I know we're going east," he said. "Anyone could tell that. But where in the east?" Muriel thought for a moment. "Ethiopia," he said. "East of Sudan is Ethiopia." Salva stopped walking. "Ethiopia? That is another country. We can't walk all the way there." "We are walking east," Muriel said firmly. "Ethiopia is east." "I can go to another country," Salva thought. "If I do, my family will never find me." Muriel put his arm around Salva's shoulders. He seemed to know what Salva was thinking, for he said, "It doesn't matter. Don't you know that if we keep walking east, we'll go all the way around the world and come right back here to Sudan? That's when we'll find our families." Salva had to laugh. They were both laughing as they started walking again, arm in arm, their strides matching perfectly. Okay, let's stop there. So Salva has met a friend, Muriel, and they're walking together. And so he's pretty excited to have somebody to walk with and talk with. And so they discuss where do they think they're going. And they decide that they're going to be heading east towards Ethiopia. And Salva's pretty concerned. He's like, "We can't walk all the way to another country. How am I going to find my family again?" And so Muriel finds a way to kind of comfort him a little bit and says, "Well, if we keep walking east, we're going to end up going around the world and come right back here to Sudan, and we will eventually find our families again." So we'll stop here, take our gist note, and continue on. More than a month had passed since Salva had run from his school into the bush. The group was now walking in the land of the ALWTW people. In the Dinka language, the ALWTW were called the people of the lion. Their region was inhabited by large herds of antelope, wildebeest, gnus, and the lions that preyed on them. The Dinka told stories about the ALWTW. When an ALWTW person died, he came back to earth as a lion, with a great hunger for the human flesh he once had. The lions in the ALWTW region were said to be the fiercest in the world. Nights became uneasy. Salvo often woke to the sound of roars in the distance and sometimes to the death squeal of an animal under a lion's claws. One morning he woke bleary-eyed after a poor sleep. He rubbed his eyes, rose, and stumbled after Muriel as they began walking yet again. "Salva?" It was not Muriel who had spoken. The voice had come from behind them. Salva turned. His mouth fell open in amazement, but he could not speak. "Salva!" Okay, so we'll stop there. So a month has passed now since Salva first ran away from school, and again continue to walking east. This time they're going through the land of the ALWTW people, where there are large animals there. There's antelope, wildebeest, gnus, lions. The Dinkas told stories about those people, and they said that when one of the ALWTW died, they came back to earth as a lion with a hunger for that human flesh. They said they were the fiercest lions in the world. So that's the area they're walking through right now. So Salva was just kind of sleeping a little uneasy, knowing that this is where they were. And then he got up and was walking around and heard someone call his name. And it wasn't Muriel, but we don't know who it is. We're going to have to wait till chapter 6 to figure out who that is. All right, we'll stop here, take our last gist note. And then for today, after you've finished writing your Just Notes into your spiral notebook, you are finished. We will be discussing Chapter 5 tomorrow and learning how to do some citing of text evidence. So you need to be sure you have finished this Ed puzzle. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.